Hey everybody, John Ramdeen with you here in the Fight Network studios. This is Fight News Now. Coming up, Robin Black and I discuss Tim Means as he's forced to pull out of his upcoming tilt with Donald Cowboy Cerrone. The UFC has a bunch of rematches on the horizon. Rockhold versus Weidman, Rousey, Holm, and Cormier versus Jones 2. And then John Pollock catches up with Kimbo Slice ahead of his Bellator tilt. Hey everybody, welcome to our downtown studios. This is Fight News Now. I am John Ramdeen. He is Robin Black, and we have a ton of stuff to talk about from the mixed martial arts world. The UFC putting together the rematch from one of the best fights, I think, of 2015. Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman. They have an opportunity to do it again. And apparently it's going down in June at UFC 199. And hopefully, we will have the middleweight champion, Luke Rockhold, in our studio over the next week or so. I'm sure you're a big fan of this fight. Just the idea of seeing a reinvigorated, renewed Chris Weidman after suffering his first professional loss.
I'm watching Chris. I'm keeping an eye on where he's at and what he's doing. We don't get to see in the gym. You know, Ray Longo will return our messages, and that's nice. But and as much as he loves Fight Network and he's a good dude, you can't always trust that they're going to give you the insight. In fact, if I was a coach and I was talking to you, I would intentionally lie to get the message I wanted out, which is generally not the truth. Not calling you a liar, my friend Ray. I think the world of you, man. But I wouldn't tell me the truth either. So we won't always have the perfect insight into what's going on. Sometimes you have to look into what you're picking up from the things that they're expressing and the way that they're talking. Weidman started out no excuses, none whatsoever. It wasn't just a mistake. I need to win every position, and I didn't do that. Now he is looking for the odd explanation. And Chris Weidman is at his best when he takes full responsibility. What he did in preparation, what he did on the night, what he did in the fight, and goes back and retools. And if and when he does that, this is going to be a mind-blowing fight.
Because now he's saying, you know, it's one of the worst camps he's ever had in his mixed martial arts career. He's dealing with a whole bunch of things. He said he felt Luke Rockhold fading in the fight, that the guy wasn't as strong, that he wanted out, but unfortunately there was an error. But again, you talk about the fact that Chris Weidman in the past has talked about, it doesn't matter if I make an error because I'm supposed to win every single position. Even if I make a mistake, I have a mental lapse, I can right the wrong. Why isn't he saying that now, considering the fact that we believe that Chris Weidman was one of the most mentally strong fighters on the planet?
I think sometimes when you find out that you are not superhuman, that when you think it's a preconceived destiny, that fate or God or whatever will see you through and you will win, and that is just a fact. When you lose, sometimes you have to go back. The one great thing about Weidman is he's been down this road before. He's talked about it. This is going to be the anchor for him. He went and he looked at his career as an elite, world-class college wrestler, and came up short a few times. And he took the responsibility. He said, this is where I was weak. This is where I didn't train hard. These were my physical and mental and technical limitations. And he changed them and came back and was the middleweight champion of the world, beat Anderson Silva 2 times. And if he takes that mentality again, if he goes and he takes responsibility and says, these are the issues, these are the physical issues, preparation issues, etc., and goes in, he can beat this man. Luke Rockhold, you can see what he's all about right now. You can see what he can do. You can see how physically dominant he is. And he's mentally strong too. That fight was spectacular, and this one is going to be even more spectacular.
What's interesting is you talk about Luke Rockhold. You know, he did the things that he needed to do to become the UFC middleweight champion. When he is trying to deal with the rematch here with Chris Weidman, mentally speaking, how does he try to anticipate the things that Chris Weidman's going to work on to improve? What new tools is he going to bring to the table? Or is he even concerned with what, again, because we've heard fighters and trainers say, we don't care what our opponents are going to do. We have our specific game plan. We know what we're good at, and we're going to execute that way. But you have to kind of be aware of some of your opponent's skill sets to know where their strongest areas are, so you don't want to get yourself in those positions.
The best way to be able to stop any of their plans is to be able to stop every plan. And I think that's the kind of thing that Rockhold looks to do. That's the kind of thing that Weidman looks to do. Literally win every exchange. If everything is its own, every exchange is its own independent slice of a fight, win every slice.
Of course, Luke Rockhold has the luxury with training with the former heavyweight champion in Cain Velasquez, as well as the current light heavyweight champion in Daniel Cormier. The UFC targeting the rematch between Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones, one of the pound-for-pound best, if not the pound-for-pound best fighter to ever step inside of the cage, set to go down in April. Has to get you excited. The idea of Daniel Cormier pushing himself, because when we were down in AKA, he said, look, my goal is to focus on Jon Jones. I know Jon Jones is the best fighter in the world. So if I'm not fighting Jon Jones, I'm fighting the number 3, number 4, number 5. It doesn't matter. I've already prepared for the best. Now that the best is out of the picture, and all he has to do is go online to see Jon Jones amping up his physical being, what is Daniel Cormier doing to ensure that the second time that they fight that he does get the victory?
The answer to that is I do not know. And the answer to that further is I don't know if he's ever shown us anything that he's done different specifically. And does he need to, you know?
Well, he didn't win the first time.
He didn't win the first fight, but he sure looked good, and he has looked good, and he's made that, you know, do you make that across-the-board improvement where I'm just a little better at everything? And if you do, is that enough? The thing that they have in common, Rockhold and Cormier, is they are both the champion. But what's the one thing about the situations that they're in that are opposites? Rockhold is in a rematch against a guy he beat, and Cormier is in a rematch against a guy he lost to. And I think this is a very valuable moment for Luke Rockhold, because he's fighting a guy who is in a rematch with a guy he lost to. So he can get into the motivation. He can see what's driving Cormier. He can see how Cormier is training. Is he training harder? Is he training to beat it? Is he thinking about how he lost? Some of that insight in his very close training partner and personal friend in Cormier's journey back to avenge a loss is insight into what Weidman's doing.
And of course, since we're on the topic of rematches, it looks like we're getting closer to one of the biggest rematches, probably the biggest rematch in UFC history. The women's bantamweight champion, Holm, looking to collide with Ronda Rousey once again. But, you know, you look at all these things that are still surrounding Ronda Rousey, dealing with her coaches and her current love interest in Travis Brown, and all the haters and all the extracurricular things that Ronda Rousey has going on the side, where Holm, for example, she gets to focus on being the best fighter in the world, working with other fighters that were the best, Jon Jones, Carlos Condit, Donald Cerrone. It's a winner's mentality at Greg Jackson. Is that the same mentality in the room with Ronda Rousey?
You know, once before in history there was a great fighter who went and they decided to leave all the stresses of home. They decided to go out on their own and be in the middle of nowhere, in the snow, in a place by themselves. That's right, I'm talking about Rocky. And when Rocky went to face the Russian, he went away. And he went away from everything. And he went in the middle. Of course, Rocky is a fictional character. But nonetheless, I'd love to see her leave it all. I'd love to see her leave the internet and her phone and agents and managers and people calling with job offers and a boyfriend and all these things and go somewhere where there's nothing. You know who else did that? Brock Lesnar did that, although he's a bit of an individual. But that would serve her well, because it certainly doesn't help when you're going to fight Holm, who's off woodshedding on how to beat you and has the tools to do so. And now, the second time, has the experience in how to, and what it feels like and how to do it. And to be dealing with red carpets and outfits and interviews and photo shoots and millions of variables like that.
But based on what we know, Ronda Rousey's not leaving her team. She believes that Edmund is the guy that allowed her to helped her win the 135-pound championship. And a lot of people say, well, she needs jiu-jitsu coaches. She needs grappling coaches. Well, we've seen for many, many years, BJ Penn, the example of, well, I'm the guy. I'm the top dog. I'm surrounded by yes men. I don't need people to teach me jiu-jitsu or grappling because I'm the best at it. I need someone to help me in my striking department, just like Ronda Rousey. The girl was an Olympic medalist, so she understands how to grapple. The idea would be to bring in coaches that can help her in the other areas. Has she done a good job? When you look at some of her, and again, it's a work in progress, just like CM Punk is going to be a work in progress. You see him inside of the cage, he's not going to look crisp. But if there's a dedication there, we know that martial arts takes years and years, possibly a lifetime to master.
Randy Couture was a guy who, although he was great at wrestling, later he became a very good striker. His whole game was just figure out what's the real important thing. And it isn't, well, Holly Holm's a great boxer, we got to work on our boxing. No, we got to not box. Yeah. We got to make boxing irrelevant. We got to make it not about boxing. Boxing's the last thing.
But you still have to have those skill sets to be able to contend with it. Because if you have no idea, if you don't understand the language at all, and Holly Holm's trying to set you up, you're going to drown.
If you are facing somebody who's a 99 out of 100 boxer and you are a 25, and that is not in the realm of, that's just how far it is to be that elite. That's not a knock at Ronda. If it was a video game, we'd call her an 85 or a 90. But the distance, it's 20 years of boxing to be able to box with her. Yeah. So, yeah, we got to figure out how to keep our hands up. We got to understand what some of these things are. But we have to deal with range. We have to deal with eliminating boxing. And that isn't taught to you by a boxing coach. That's taught to you by a strategist. That's taught to you by footwork coaches. That's taught to you by mental coaches. That's taught to you by grapplers and wrestlers, people who understand how to adapt judo when closing the distance to ignore. You don't box with Holly Holm. You don't try to box with Holly Holm. You make it not about boxing. And there's many ways to do that. Of course, if you have 1,000 hours, we're going to put 200 of them to boxing. We have to. It's worth it. We're going to do it. But we're not going to put 800 of them to it because the real important stuff is getting past the boxing. And if you spend all your time boxing, you could spend the next 20 years, you'll never be able to outbox her.
Holly Holm's teammate, Donald Cerrone, was supposed to be, or I guess he's still going to be in action, was set to take on Tim Means at the end of the month. The Dirty Bird failed his pre-fight drug test and is now out of the contest with Donald Cerrone. Very strange.
Yeah, and it was an interesting one. I had to look it up, Austinine or something like that. And you look it up, and it's, he mentioned, and hey man, if you get popped, you got popped. You had it in your system. If you want to manage, either the truth was you were just taking some kind of thing, over-the-counter thing that had it, that is possible, and that, or you weren't and you were taking it and you want to manage your reputation, that, go ahead, man, do your thing. Like you got popped, it was in your blood, so you have failed. Handle that however you want. As Chael Sonnen would say, I took it, I'm sorry. This guy is saying, I don't even know what it was, and maybe he doesn't know what it was, but when you look it up, it sure is a good drug for fighting, I'll tell you that, because as you look at what it is, what it isn't, most anabolics or testosterone or any stuff, even if you could beat the test, after you take it, there's hormonal spikes and valleys that happen in the fighter's endocrine system. And to counter those, they take something called PCT, post-psychotherapy, and those are banned substances too. So you're taking drugs, and then to get healthy enough to fight, you're taking more drugs. There's more things you can pop for. This thing just is, in and of itself, not quite as powerful as most steroids, but less detectable. You don't have to take all these other things. It helps with your joints. It helps with lean muscle. It sounds like a pretty damn good drug if you're going to cheat. But he may not have taken it on purpose, but regardless, he got popped.
Word is the UFC trying to put together the matchup between Donald Cowboy Cerrone and Alex Cowboy Oliveira from Brazil. Two exciting fighters. But coming up this weekend, we are getting you set for all of the mixed martial arts action going down in Las Vegas, Nevada. Tune in Saturday at 7 p.m. as we have a 1-hour preview show getting you set for the welterweight tilt between Johnny Hendricks and Stephen Thompson. And then tune it in to Fight Network at 8 p.m. for the prelims, which include the match between KJ Noons and Josh Berkman and that must-see 125-pound tilt between Justin Scoggins and Ray Borg.